The holographic star map flickered above the obsidian table, casting blue light across the faces of the Galactic Council's military observers. Elsa Chen stood at attention in her crisp Earth Defense Force uniform, her neural interface humming softly at the base of her skull as she processed the tactical data streaming through the council chamber. "Commander Chen," the Voreth representative's translator device crackled, its mechanical voice struggling to convey the alien's obvious condescension. "Your species has 12 hours, perhaps 15 if you retreat to your inner system. The Krell Armada will reach Earth's orbit by 600 Universal Time." Elsa's jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. Beside her, Lieutenant Kevin Rodriguez kept his hands clasped behind his back, though she could see the tension in his shoulders through her peripheral vision. They were the only humans in a chamber filled with beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "With respect, Observer Cathal," Elsa said, her voice steady, "humanity requests permission to engage the Krell fleet on our own terms." A ripple of what might have been laughter, or perhaps disgust, moved through the assembled aliens. The Voreth were massive, crystalline beings who communicated through harmonic resonances. The smaller, insectoid Chidari clicked their mandibles in what their translation software rendered as amusement. Even the usually stoic Draen, with their flowing, mercury-like bodies, seemed to shimmer with what Elsa had learned to recognize as pity. "Young species," Cathal's voice resonated through the chamber, "the Krell have conquered 47 star systems. Their quantum-shielded dreadnoughts are impervious to conventional weapons. Their AI-guided swarm fighters number in the millions. You have 3 outdated orbital defense platforms and a fleet of chemical propulsion vessels that our ancestors would have considered primitive." Kevin shifted slightly. Elsa knew he was accessing the tactical subroutines in his neural implant, running calculations, reviewing the data they'd spent months preparing. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod. "We understand the odds," Elsa replied. "We're asking for the opportunity to defend ourselves." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the Draen Prime Speaker, a being older than human civilization itself, spoke with a voice like silver bells. "You are a Tier 3 species, Commander Chen. Barely 2 centuries since your first orbital flight. The Krell are Tier 1. This is not bravery. This is suicide." "Perhaps," Elsa acknowledged, "but it's our suicide to commit." Cathal's crystalline form pulsed with what the translator interpreted as a sigh. "Very well. The Council will observe. We will retrieve your survivors and grant them refuge on New Terra. The Krell will not pursue refugees under Council protection." "There won't be any refugees," Kevin said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken, and his voice carried an edge that made several council members turn their various sensory organs toward him. "Lieutenant Rodriguez believes in fairy tales," a Chitara observer chittered. "Admirable if futile." "No," Kevin continued, his dark eyes meeting the alien's compound gaze without flinching. "I believe in engineering." 6 hours later, Elsa stood on the bridge of the EDF Prometheus, humanity's flagship and one of only 12 capital ships in Earth's defense fleet. The bridge was cramped compared to the vast alien vessels she'd toured, every surface covered in displays and control interfaces. But it was human, built by human hands with human ingenuity, and right now, that meant everything. "Krell fleet emerging from quantum transit in 3 minutes, the tactical officer announced. "Confirmed count, 147 vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts." Elsa's neural interface painted the battlefield in her mind's eye. The Krell fleet was massive, exactly as the intelligence reports had warned. Each dreadnought was the size of a small city, wrapped in quantum probability shields that could shrug off nuclear weapons like raindrops. Their swarm fighters moved in coordinated waves controlled by hive-mind AI systems that could process battlefield data faster than any biological brain. Against this, humanity fielded 12 capital ships, 34 frigates, and 106 fighters. On paper, it wasn't even close. "Open a channel to the fleet," Elsa commanded. "All ships, execute Protocol Archimedes on my mark." Kevin stood at the engineering station, his fingers dancing across haptic controls that only his neural interface could see. "Focal point calculations locked in," he reported. "Solar collectors at 97% efficiency, capacitor banks charging." The Council observers watched from their own vessels, safely positioned at the edge of the system. Elsa could feel their attention like a physical weight, their certainty that they were about to witness humanity's extinction. The Krell fleet materialized, a swarm of dark shapes that seemed to drink in the light of Earth's sun. Immediately, their fighters began to deploy, millions of autonomous drones programmed for one purpose: total annihilation. "They're not even bothering with formation," the tactical officer observed. "They're treating us like we're not even a threat." "Good," Elsa said. "Let them think that. Kevin status. Capacitors at 60%. We need them closer." The Krell dreadnoughts advanced, their quantum shields shimmering like soap bubbles in vacuum. Their weapons, planet crackers that could split continents with focused gravity waves, began to charge. "Ma'am, they're targeting Earth directly," the weapons officer said, her voice tight. "Not engaging our fleet first." Elsa's hands gripped the armrests of her command chair. Every instinct screamed to order the attack, to defend her homeworld. But the math had to work. The distances had to be perfect. "Hold position," she ordered. "All ships maintain holding pattern." The Krell fleet crossed the orbital plane of Mars, then the asteroid belt, still advancing, still ignoring the human fleet as if they were barely worth the ammunition. In the Council observation vessel, Cathal watched with something approaching sadness. "They are not even fighting back," the Voreth observer noted, perhaps paralyzed by fear. But the Drayan Prime Speaker, older and wiser, had begun to notice something. Their ships, they are not in defensive formation. They are arranged in a geometric pattern, a parabola. On the Prometheus, Kevin's board lit up green. "Capacitors at 100%. All collection arrays online. We have the angle, Commander." Elsa took a deep breath. Humanity had learned much in its 2 centuries in space. They had learned they were not alone. They had learned they were behind, technologically outmatched by civilizations that had mastered physics humans barely understood. But they had also learned something the galaxy's ancient powers had forgotten: creativity born of desperation. "Execute Archimedes," Elsa commanded. Across the solar system, an engineering marvel activated. For months, human ships had been deploying solar collectors, vast mirrors in space, each one positioned with mathematical precision. They were old technology, simple reflective surfaces that any spacefaring species would consider primitive. The Council had noted them in their intelligence reports and dismissed them as pathetic attempts at supplementary power generation. They were half right. The collectors were generating power, but not for the ships. Each mirror was positioned in a carefully calculated arc, forming a parabolic array with a focal point directly in the path of the Krell Armada. Kevin's fingers flew across his controls, adjusting mirror angles, compensating for stellar drift, focal point locked. The light of Sol, Earth's sun, bent. Millions of square kilometers of solar radiation, focused and directed by mirrors spread across 300 million kilometers of space, converged on a single point. The temperature at the focal point reached 20 million degrees Celsius in 0.3 seconds. The Krell vanguard simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, vaporized at the atomic level. Their quantum shields, designed to deflect particle beams and kinetic weapons, had no defense against concentrated stellar radiation operating at temperatures found in the core of a star. "Rotating focal array," Kevin announced calmly, though Elsa could hear the controlled excitement in his voice. "Target, Dreadnought Cluster Alpha." The focal point moved. dragging a line of stellar fire across the Krell formation like God's own cutting torch. Dreadnoughts that had survived planetary bombardments and fleet engagements for decades melted like wax, their exotic matter hulls breaking down into constituent atoms under thermal stress that no material could withstand. The Krell swarm fighters, controlled by AI that had conquered dozens of species, tried to adapt. They broke formation, scattered, attempted to flank the human fleet from multiple vectors. Dispersing focal point, Kevin reported, switching to area effect. The parabolic array shifted configuration. Instead of a single point of apocalyptic heat, it created a thermal gradient, a zone of space where the temperature climbed from merely fatal to instantly vaporizing. The Krell fighters flew into it like moths into a flame. The entire engagement lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it was over, the Krell armada was gone, not retreating, not damaged, gone, reduced to ionized particles that would eventually drift into the sun that had destroyed them. The EDF fleet hadn't fired a single shot. On the Council observation vessel, silence reigned. The Chitare's mandibles hung slack. The Voreth's harmonic resonance had ceased entirely. Even the ancient Drayan prime speaker seemed frozen in shock. Impossible, Cathal finally managed to vocalize. The energy requirements, the coordination, the mathematics. Our sophomore-level physics, Kevin said over the open channel. His voice was polite, but Elsa could hear the smile in it. We call it the Archimedes Protocol, named after an ancient human who supposedly said he could move the world if you gave him a lever long enough and a place to stand. We figured the sun was a pretty good lever. Elsa stood, smoothing her uniform. Council observers, humanity thanks you for your support. We will not be requiring refugee assistance at this time. However, we would like to discuss renegotiation of Earth's tier status. We believe Tier 3 may no longer be accurate. The Drayan prime speaker, recovering first, allowed what might have been respect to color its tone. Commander Chen, your species has achieved something unprecedented. You have defeated a Tier 1 civilization with technology we considered obsolete. Not obsolete, Elsa corrected gently. Underestimated, there's a difference. Cathal's crystalline form pulsed with new harmonics. The Council will convene. This changes everything. A species that can weaponize stellar radiation with such precision. What else might you be capable of? Kevin pulled up a schematic on the public channel. A design for orbital mirrors that could be deployed around any star, creating defensive perimeters, or, if necessary, offensive capabilities that could reach across light years. We're calling it the Helios Network, he explained. We thought the galaxy might be interested in the blueprints, for a reasonable licensing fee, of course. Elsa allowed herself a small smile. The Krell had predicted victory in hours. The Council had predicted humanity's defeat in minutes. They were right about the time frame, at least. Just wrong about who would be defeated. As the Council vessels prepared to depart, no doubt to report this impossible development to their governments, Elsa looked out at the stars. Humanity had been the newest kids on the galactic block, the primitives struggling to catch up to civilizations that had mastered the cosmos while humans were still learning to make fire. But humanity had something those ancient species had lost over their millions of years of existence: the desperation to innovate, the audacity to look at a sun and think weapon, and the sheer stubborn refusal to accept that the old ways were the only ways. Set course for Earth, Elsa commanded. Let's go home. Kevin nodded, already running calculations for the next generation of the Helios network. You know the Council is going to want to hire us as defensive consultants. Let them offer, Elsa replied. We've got a solar system to fortify and a galaxy to introduce to human engineering. Outside the viewport, Earth hung in space, blue, beautiful, and defended not by the technology of the ancients, but by the ingenuity of a species that had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage. The Council had predicted humanity would fall in minutes. They were right about one thing: the battle had indeed ended in minutes. Just not the way anyone, except two humans, had expected.